Are you looking to get a professional looking finish on projects or furniture that you build? Well, in this video, I'm going to show you just how to do that. First, by showing you how to build a temporary spray booth in your garage in under 15 minutes. Then I'm going to show you at a high level how to use one of these HVLP spray guns instead of a paintbrush. And I'll share some lessons I learned along the way in my first time using one of these spray guns. So let's start with the supplies you need to build your temporary spray booth. The first thing you're going to need, some plastic. Doesn't have to be real thick. This is 0.9 mil thick. Just make sure it's wider, at least a foot wider than your ceiling is tall, so you have a little extra at the top and bottom. I got this box 9 foot wide by 400 feet long for like $40 at Ace Hardware. I'll put a link in the description. The second thing is you're going to need some kind of a pole to hold the plastic up. You're going to need 4 of them. I bought these zip wall poles and I love these things. These things made it so much easier, and this is why it took me less than 15 minutes. So they're quick quarter twist. You can extend them, lock them, and then what really makes these things a big help is the top of this is spring loaded. So it's easy for you to push it up on the ceiling and get it locked in. The other thing that's really cool is these things have this little clip that comes off. So the plastic goes on here, the clip goes on this, you lock it into place, and now it'll hold the plastic as you lift it up into the ceiling so you don't have it slipping off the top of the pole. So that made it really easy as well. Then once you've got your poles up, you're going to need something to clip the bottom of the plastic, or the plastic to the bottom of the pole. I used my spring clamps, I got Irwin and Pony spring clamps, and that was actually a mistake because they got covered in paint because they're inside the spray booth. So you could do that, but over time these things will get ruined. Or I'd recommend going out and getting these little binder clips that you can get at a stationery store for holding big stacks of paper and using them, and then when they get too much paint on them, just throw them in the trash. The next thing you're going to need is a box fan. You need to ventilate this thing. Cheap 20-inch box fan works fine. Get yourself 2 20 by 20 filters. One for to go on a box fan for the exhaust, and I'll show you, we're going to put a second one in so that you have some intake coming into the spray booth. And then the last thing is just something to cover the floor. You could use the plastic. I decided to use a canvas drop cloth just because the plastic can get slippery on this garage floor. So that's the list of supplies. Let's go ahead and I'll walk you step by step through how to build this temporary booth. To get started, I spread out the canvas drop cloth and pull out a little more than 26 feet of plastic. I built my booth 5 by 8, so 26 feet was a proper amount for me. Once I had the plastic pulled out, I arranged it roughly in the shape of the booth. Here I am attaching the zip poles so I can secure the plastic to the ceiling. You'll notice I'm putting the poles on the outside of the booth. I did this to keep them from getting covered with paint. Once all the poles are in place, I secure the plastic to the pole by clamping it down at the base. This is where I said you should use those binder clamps instead of those pony clamps that I showed you. Zip Wall makes zipper doors you can use, but for this purpose it's an unnecessary expense. Clamping the opening to the pole works just as well. So here you can see I'm starting to install the ventilation. I start by putting the fan on the outside of the booth on the ground with the filter in between. I then go inside the booth and I start cutting away the plastic to expose the filter, and then tape the edges of the plastic to the filter itself. I put this exhaust fan on the ground to create a downdraft within the booth. As you can see here, I'm cutting an opening in the plastic at the top of the opposite wall and installing a filter up top to prevent any dust from getting into the booth and provide adequate intake to keep the walls from being sucked inward. A second set of hands would have been nice here, but I made it work. So here you can see the finished booth. This took me less than 15 minutes to put together. Okay, so let's talk about the spray gun and the basics of the spray gun. I got this particular spray gun at Home Depot. This is a gravity-fed gun. So basically you put paint in the hopper here, and then as you spray, air goes through the gun, and then it picks up paint along the way and it sprays it out. And this version does not have a regulator on it. I don't feel like that's needed. That was an extra expense. I just started off by turning the air pressure all the way down on this and then slowly increasing it until I got a nice consistent spray. There's two more adjustment knobs on here that are important. This first knob here at the top controls the pattern. So how big of a pattern is it? Is it a small pattern or wide pattern? And this is where I learned my first lesson. As you can see here, like a typical guy, I didn't read the instructions, and here you can see I start off painting small lines going up and down. Once I adjusted this, I got a wider spray and the job went much faster. The second knob here controls the paint volume. So how much paint's getting pulled through that airstream. Too little paint is going to get you poor coverage. Too much paint, you could wind up with some dripping or runs in the finish. So I recommend you practice this, which I didn't. And this is leading me to my second lesson. So I started off by straining my paint. You should use a paint strainer before putting it in a hopper, but I did not thin the paint. So I recommend you thin your paint and practice on a piece of cardboard. Because my paint was so thick, it was spitting out of the gun. And as a result, I didn't get a nice smooth finish. As a matter of fact, it was kind of rough. So I wound up sanding it down lightly and then refinishing it, and it came out perfect in the end when I was done respraying it. The last thing I would say is just know that you get two directions you can spray in. So I can spray in a horizontal by having this go side to side, and then if I want to spray vertical, I turn this 90 degrees and then my spray pattern goes vertical. So in the end, it all worked out perfect. The booth contained all the spray, the ventilation system did its job, and the piece ended up much better than if I had finished it by hand with a paintbrush. My friends, I hope you found this video helpful. I hope you found it educational, and I hope you're excited to give this a try yourself. If so, please do me a favor, leave a comment, hit the like button, or subscribe to my channel.